Hi, I'm Professor Kannan Mohan from the Department of CIS. So we are involved in use of electronic books at Baruch, and in fact this is a CUNY-wide initiative to increase the use of electronic books, primarily to reduce cost for students. A couple of years back, probably 2.5, 3 years back, Michael Wallman from the library, he's the head of the circulation department, and I got together to write a proposal to submit to BCTC, that's our computing and technology center, on using Kindles for classrooms. So we wrote a proposal saying, okay, here is a course that we're going to teach, and the course happened to be Green IT, which focused on sustainability in IT. And we wrote in the proposal that for this course we can probably buy Kindles, load the Kindles with textbooks and hand it over to students, and study the experience of how students like using Kindle as the readers for electronic books for the course. And BCTC reacted enthusiastically, and they funded the proposal. We went ahead and bought probably 40 plus Kindles, and the course, the first time we ran it, it was in spring 2010. We had about 30 to 35 students, I think, and each student was handed over a Kindle. Basically the way we did it is we bought copies of textbooks and preloaded them onto the Kindles, made them available in the library, and students can just go to the library and check out their Kindles. And at the end of the semester they go back to the library and return the Kindle so that it will be useful for coming students. In fact, we are doing the same thing this semester. We have a graduate course on Green IT, and the students are using the Kindles that we used last year. And this year we use a different book. We just loaded it again and followed the same process separately. For the Kindles, we did collect preliminary data. We in fact wrote the proposal as a research proposal, and we wanted to collect data from students and understanding how they use the Kindles. The initial data that we have suggests that they had mixed reactions. Some students really liked it, some didn't like it, and there were some in the middle that were indifferent towards the use of Kindles. And we also collected a bit of qualitative data to understand as to why they would like using the Kindles, whether they would continue doing this and so on. Some students said that it is more sustainable, that you're not really using the printed physical book and it's just electronic. And some students said that it's just easier to read in the subway, so you don't have to carry like 5 or 6 different books. You can just choose the book and start reading. So there were a variety of responses from students. So overall it was mixed reaction. So that's for the Kindles. For the electronic books delivered through a computer, maybe using your laptop that you can read. In fact, many might not know this. Our library has a large collection of electronic books that are available free of cost to students. So faculty members are free to choose these as textbooks. So basically students won't pay anything to use these as textbooks in the class. The only problem is you have to be connected to the internet for most of these books. So if you go to say Books 24/7 or eBrary, these are a couple of providers that we have in our library. So you can go search for the topic that you're working on and find a book there and start reading. The user interface can use a little more help. But, for example, Books 24/7, when we heard from students, they weren't really comfortable navigating the textbook in that way. But it's, I think, a great tool, and it's very cost effective from a student's point of view, at least. And these are resources that are already available. I mean, it's just sitting there on the library's website that students can access. So the reactions from students on that is that one, they were concerned about accessing these books when they need it. So if they're in the subway, obviously they cannot access this. When they're mobile, they cannot really access this. They really need a computer that they need to lug along to be able to see this book. And the other concern is whether they will print these books. Maybe for students, because students are not buying any books, they just use the Kindle and read. But for the college, in fact, when we bought the Kindle a couple of years back, each Kindle was probably around $380 or $390. The price fell dramatically after that. So from the college's point of view, it was not really cost effective. But this is something that we had in mind as a longer term initiative to see how students really are looking at using e-readers. And eventually, if it works well, the idea was that you can have one student load books from a variety of courses and just carry one Kindle. So electronically, the books might be cheaper for the students. We still haven't figured out the model yet, because we cannot have the students load their content onto Kindles yet. So we have some challenges, but this is sort of a pilot initiative that we started with, just to study how students react to this e-reader. I think eventually we'll have to decide on what direction to go towards. For example, with the Kindle, at the time we started, there weren't many options available. Now there are so many e-readers available. So, one, it is a complex problem to even understand what are the options available and select one to see which will be most suitable for students. So that needs some work. We need to have pilot projects such as what we did before. And in fact, Baruch is also working with some iPads where they loaded a lot of English literature work that's used in one of the courses at Baruch to see how students use it. So pilot projects like these, I think, will eventually provide us some directions towards where we need to go. And regarding ebooks that are not done through e-readers but read through computers, I think we are already having a large collection. It is just a matter of figuring out how best to use this for students. So if you think about how is it going to be a few years down the line, my hope is that many more faculty members will realize that this is a more cost-effective, viable direction to take for students and start selecting these books as textbooks as well. And perhaps some of these e-readers will become more useful, where we could have this as sort of the central repository where students can add all the material that they have for all the coursework and they just carry this in one device. But I don't know how soon that's going to happen, though. That's the hope.
The topic of the class is green IT, which is about saving the environment. And we feel like this is a really big thing in that area as well, because now instead of printing out all those hundreds of thousands of books, textbooks, you electronically download it onto this. So forward, one of the big problems is a lot of the textbook companies are not yet on board with this. They don't like the idea of students paying a lot less right now. So they're, the textbooks cost usually well over 100, right? And so they haven't worked out a price with Amazon or Barnes and Noble and so on that they're satisfied with. Eventually, because there's so much demand, they're going to have to start doing it. So yeah, I think they're going to have to start producing more textbooks because everybody wants it. It's like what happened with music, right? Remember with music, music companies made a lot of money on the CDs, but nobody wanted to buy the CDs. You wanted one song and you wanted to be able to download it anytime you want on all kinds of devices. Eventually, iTunes came along and created that whole way of doing things where you could buy one song. I think the same thing, they're fighting it because their existing business model makes them a lot of money right now, but eventually they're going to have to start.
I think it would benefit them because also their costs would go down.
That's true. It's a lot easier to distribute it as well. You don't have to ship all the stuff all over the place. And I think from an environmental standpoint, it's going to be really positive too.